Hello, and welcome to another episode of Comedian Paradise. Now, today's guest is the brilliant Dan Lees. He is a clown performer from the Lecoq earlier lineage. He is a man who will direct a fantastic clown show. He is a man who helped bring about the London Clown Festival. But in all honesty, he is the bollocks of clowning. He is an awesome man. He is brilliant. And I think you're going to love him like a fantastic and beautiful and delicious, the best dish in the world, fish and chips. Please welcome Dan Lees. Hello, Dan. How are we doing? It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah. How you doing?
It's been a while, hasn't it? It's been not since Edinburgh, I think.
No, it must be. Yeah. You going this
I,
year?
things have been very good. I can't believe it's nearly Edinburgh again already.
Yeah. You going up
I,
again?
sorry, what
You
happened?
going up again?
Not this year, but I think I'll go next year. What? I don't want to. Yeah, I think I'll go next year. And it'll be totally different show. Yeah, I'm going to try something different next year. But
Cool.
this year, I think I'm going to leave it, and maybe I might come and visit and watch a couple of shows. What
Right.
about you? What are your plans? Are you going to go up to Edinburgh and do another show, or are you going to?
I'm doing a new solo show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it going to be mixed in with some of the stuff that I saw from the show last year, or is it completely
So it's
fresh?
basically the same concept with the album covers,
Oh, okay.
but completely new album covers. So it's the one last year.
Is it going to be in a different venue? Because I know that PVH had lost a few venues, didn't they, to Just the Tonic?
No, I'm in the same space, same time.
Oh, okay, that's good. That's very good.
Yeah, I've had the same space, same time for about 5 years, I think.
Okay, that must feel pretty good.
Yeah, well, I like the space, so yeah, don't need to change it really. It's a good time. Nice.
But
Warm.
if someone came in and said, "Right, we're Monkey Barrel," or like we're the Pleasance, would you change your mind?
I've done the Pleasance. I've done the Underbelly. I've done the Gilded Balloon. I've done just the Tonic. I've uh, I've done them all, and I still that room is great. The Banshee Labyrinth Cinema room is like one of the best rooms, I think.
Okay.
And it's also, I mean, I think about doing the Monkey Barrel. I think probably, but not only if it was a good space.
Hmm. I do hear from all the venues, the main venues that I hear a lot of great things about are the Pleasance or Monkey Bow. Particularly Monkey Bow, I hear so many good things about them.
Yeah, I think it's a good venue, and that's where everyone wants to be, is at Monkey Barrel, because obviously it's pay what you want, so it's free fringe, and uh, and they got a good reputation and loads of good people there, so it's a good location. So yeah, it's good.
You directed a few shows last year, didn't you? You directed Vigo, is that right? And did you direct Julia as well?
No, I didn't direct their shows last year. I directed the shows the year before.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
I directed Julia in Legs and Logs
Okay.
with the Duncan brothers.
Yeah, it's actually no, I should save this question till later because I'm intrigued about this. Like, what's it like directing people? Because I mean, that must be. I'll ask it later. I don't want to
Yeah,
ask it now.
no, whichever. I don't mind. Are you going to ask these questions in? I'd rather not see the questions. I'd rather you just ask me them. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Shall I delete? I'll delete
Well,
it.
I'd rather it was a chat. Yeah.
Do do you do a lot of podcasts, or do you do the odd one here and there?
I do some, yeah, here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love doing them. I mean, I've had and I like to vary it a bit. I mean, I speak to some clowns, I speak to some comedians.
Yeah.
It's yeah, I love it. I find I'm a bit addicted to it, to be honest. I find that I don't know. It's just a lot of fun, a little conversation, a little bit of therapy, and I just see. I don't know. There's things that I find in these podcast conversations that
Mm.
maybe take me 2 or 3 years to figure out. But if you're talking to someone that's been going for years or is really good at what they do, and I'll learn that in 1 hour, what would take me maybe 2 or 3 years to learn on my own.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
And
Well, yeah, I hope I can. I've got any info. I might not have anything to say. But anyway, you can have a go.
well, one thing I'm definitely interested here about, maybe not talk about it now, but I saw on the BBC News that they were talking about clowning and they interviewed you. And I remember them, they were saying things in a bit of a fishy manner. I remember it being a bit,
Oh, you saw that?
I remember them being a bit patronizing. They were trying to say that all clowns are a certain way. And you're like, no, this is what clowning is. It's this and that. And I think I remember them, they cut it short or something. Is that what happened? I can't remember fully.
Um, is it the one that was on News 24, like 24-hour news?
Maybe, yeah.
There was one on 24-hour news. They got me in because I volunteer for a organization called Clowns Without Borders, and we do shows for refugees and in sort of war-torn countries and stuff like that. And they said they were interested in that, but when I turned up, they started asking questions about and showing. They showed this film of all these sad clowns, and it was all about sort of how clowning was dying a death, and no one can find any work, and there's no work for children's clowns, and it had all these clowns, and they were all crying, and they all looked really sad, all in like full makeup, and uh, and the first question was, clowning, something like clowning is dying, you know, how do you feel, it's clown, and my immediate answer was, in my experience, it's the complete opposite. There's more and more interest in clowning year on year, and there has been for the last, well, for as long as I've been in clowning, it seems to have become more and more uh, popular amongst performers and within the comedy world. So yeah, it's just interesting that their whole take on it. It was like they had a story that they wanted to tell, and it didn't really fit the same my experience. And they also
Uh,
they wanted me to turn up. They wanted me to come with a red nose on. They wanted me to wear makeup, and I was like saying I don't wear makeup. And so that was like that fucked with their heads. They're like, well, what do you mean you don't wear makeup? You're a clown. It's like to explain clowning to the mainstream or to someone like that is very difficult because the assumption is always it's the circus clown, the red nose, the party, the children's party clown. That's what everybody thinks it is, and
yeah,
and even when you try and explain how it's not, they don't. They just see, people get more confused. It's a big it's a big subject, But within the people who know about it and have studied it,
yeah,
it's very yeah. Well, it's building in popularity for sure.
yeah, definitely. Golier as well is being a big part of that.
Yeah,
And
have you
there's,
you've been? Have you?
yes, I completed the year program a couple years ago. And
Mm.
it was, yeah, I don't know, it's strange with Golier. When I first did it in 2019, 2020, he seemed quite well and healthy. But when I came back, it looked like fuck, man. It looks like he'd been through, yeah, he's lost a lot last time I saw him. And I can only imagine it's,
Yeah, yeah. I don't think. Yeah, he's not well. I don't think. And yeah, yeah.
the one thing I'm finding interesting at the moment, talking to a lot of different clowns, is talking to ones with a different background to those that have gone to Golia. Because before I went to Golia, I thought that was all the clowning. But since I went, found out about Barnaby King and like the Clownversation, there's all these different people that have studied clown from different backgrounds, and there's so much to it, like curing people with dementia, obviously. And I used to always think that most of the clowns before I went to Golia all came from Golia, but it's
Right.
interesting to see how diverse it is.
Yeah, and it is diverse, and I mean, there's a big difference between there's a tradition of clowning that sort of exists in circus, and that's very different from the sort of theatre clowns that we're which sort of the clowning that tends to be popular now, I guess, that everybody's interested in more or less is the sort of Lecoq, Gaulier lineage.
Yeah.
And Lecoq was the first person to sort of bring clowning to theatre and use it for teaching acting. And that's sort of the tradition that I've been interested in, I guess, and that's kind of the tradition that I teach in. But then, of course, clowning has always it's always existed as a just passing it on through the ages between families and within circuses and vaudeville acts, you know.
And it's, yeah. And it's just, did it come from Pierre Billard? I heard that Pierre Billard was a student of Lecoq and then he taught Gaulier. And Gaulier looks just like him.
Really, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the full history. You probably know more than I do. But that was
I,
supposed to be what he was the one. Oh, do you mean Pierre Bilan? Bilan.
yes, Bilan, that's the
Yeah.
one.
So I've heard that he was the guy that introduced the red nose.
Yes, that's what I hear.
Um, yeah, using the red nose. But I think that they were experimenting with clowning without the red nose as well. And of course, I don't teach with the red nose, so many teachers don't.
Hmm,
Uh, yeah, but yeah, I think it was him. Yeah, he introduced it. Yeah, that's what I've heard.
created it. Right.
Yeah, history. So you know the history.
A little bit. I mean, I learned from secondhand information, but I'm not like
Yeah,
clued up on it fully. There's so
yeah,
much I
well,
don't know about clowning. I mean, I've done Gurley, I did a bit of Mick Barnfather, but in all honesty, like in terms of clowning techniques and getting, I've been so in tune and stand up. There's a lot that I don't know about clowning, even though I'll be honest, I'm much better clown than I am a stand up. I
mm,
often try and tell jokes on stage and they often don't work. But
mm,
what gets people laughing is I'm a bit of a knob. And
mm.
that's what gets people laughing more so than anything else.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, that seems to be what works. I mean,
yeah, and I think that's the difference. That's the difference between a clown, essentially, in a simplistic way. The difference between a clown and another comedic performer is the clown is all about letting everyone laugh at you and what an idiot you are, rather than laughing at your clever ideas or your clever,
yeah,
you know, your joke. Essentially, the clown is the joke. So yeah, I think some people use that a lot. And you probably did it when you were at school as well, did you? You didn't mind being a knob for a laugh.
I don't know what it is. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I think I can be quite analytical and I'm quite
Mm,
certain things I'm quite smart in. Like I'm good at being analytical and
yeah.
this is specific. I'm good at like with podcast interviews. I'm reasonably good at this.
Mm,
I can good at listening. I'm good sort of researching things. But
mm,
when it comes to I don't know practical things like I don't know working science classes or going to Gaulier and theatre school and following all these things, I've got a bit of a comedy in mind. I switch off and then I'll do something stupid. I don't know what it is. I think it's always people have always thought I'm a knob throughout my entire life, but
mm.
but they think that there's one side of me that's daft, but I think that everything about me is daft. But do you
Oh,
have that
really?
as well, Dan?
How do you know that? How do you know that? They tell you
Oh, the fact that people call me an idiot.
face. I mean, that's the other thing about clowning is like, obviously, we band around the word idiot a lot, call each other idiots, and we mean it in a complimentary way, you know? And I think when people hear it, you know, when they're not familiar with it, you know, they sort of think, "What are you doing calling him an idiot?" I remember a good friend of mine. I was on Facebook. She shared a video. It was a really funny video, and I put underneath it, "You idiot," you know, and I meant it in a nice way. And underneath, her mum had put, "I can't believe what you do calling my daughter an idiot." She got really angry underneath. And then she was like, "No, you have to understand. Idiot is it's a complimentary term in clowning. You know, it means you're a beautiful idiot. Yeah, it's the goal. It's what you're trying to be. You know."
You're pure.
And I think for me, I think like I think I found a very similar thing to what you're talking about. I found that I could be funny. People would laugh at me for being ridiculous or whatever it was, and then realizing that there's a whole kind of whole world which is clowning, where you're just crafting that, crafting the ability to let people laugh at your stupidity. And 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 I find personally, I find that's the funny. They're the funny. It's the funniest laughs that I make when I'm laughing at a kind of comedic act that doesn't mind you laughing at them, and at their ridiculousness, rather than. I mean, I do like humor that's cerebral as well, but it's a different kind of laugh. The oh, that's clever, or the what a fucking idiot laugh. I kind of find they're two different.
Hmm.
I mean, personally, I don't like one of your questions is about like difference between what's a good makes a good clown show. But when I'm making a show, I don't really see it as a clown show. I see clowning as one element of the puzzle. Clowning is all one tool in the toolbox of comedy.
Yeah.
Jokes are also valid. Uh, I mean, because I originally did stand up, and then I was doing musical comedy, like more like cabaret, and then I sort of was more clowning. But I've done all sorts of different types of, I guess, genres of performance. So yeah, I kind of draw on all of them, I think. And
Yeah.
yeah.
You're like an MMA fighter. You're studying Muay
It's
Thai,
like
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Glad you
it's
found
like
your own thing.
MMA fighting. Exactly, that's what it is. I mean, like, well, it kind of is in a way, but maybe that's like the nature of like postmodernism, and the world now is like we. I think things are less pure form. Like comedy exists in everything. It exists in every TV drama, or we don't watch. In fact, there aren't many sort of comedy films come out now. Pure comedy. It tends to be it's a film with comedy in it, like a Marvel film will be comedies in it, but it's not comedy film kind of thing. So maybe, yeah. But MMA fighting, I'll take that.
Why not? You know, one thing that's already gone quite interesting, Dan. No, it's funny. There's two things that I do the podcast, right? I have a little chat with the person beforehand,
Yeah.
and often I stop it and then I do the intro. But then
Mm.
again, sometimes it flows, and you're like, we're having a good conversation. It's flowing quite well, and it's like,
Mm.
if I went and stopped it and did the intro, it'd ruin the flow. So I'm like, yeah, with this, I think we just carry
Yeah.
on.
All right, carry on. I'm happy with that.
And it's funny what you say about, and I mentioned this with Jeff Raz, which is the guest that I interviewed yesterday. I
Mm.
bloody won I am when I was half dead, but it was all good. It woke me up a bit,
Did it?
but yeah, I think experiences or trying to take, yeah, exactly, widening your influences to form something that's unique and created to you, rather than
Mm.
always go through the well-trodden path, which is something that goes on a lot with stand-up that I see as a comedy promoter, because a lot of
Yeah.
them are trying to be too much like people they've already seen, because they see that that's the acceptable way of doing it and they look a certain way. But what's sometimes funny with great comics like Joey Diaz, he's got mad stories that don't make him look good. He doesn't always look like the idiot, but he doesn't make himself look good either, because he tells the
Yeah.
honesty of the weird life he's lived.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are lots of stand-ups that are kind of clowns, but obviously not fully, or somewhere in between. I think. I mean, it's probably a spectrum, and there's probably. I mean, I like. What would you describe, as a pure clown act? Well, for a lot of people, it would probably be silent or something. That'd be like pure clown. Um, but um, but certainly, I wouldn't like when I'm building a show. I don't want to like restrict anything. Like, and it really. I mean, if it's a solo show, like back to your question about directing, it's really about what do you want to do, and then how can we make that happen, and can we make sure that all the comedy is clear and the games are clear,
Hmm.
and how and the structure is clear, and but it's really with a solo show, it's an incredible freedom because it really is about what the fuck do you want to do? You can do whatever you want. So it has to come first and foremost from the performer, and then you try and work from there, you know. Also, like as a solo performer, you've got to go out and do it every night. So you better damn well be happy with it and feel like it resonates with you, you know.
Does being a director, do you, when you're doing your own shows, do you get someone to direct you? And does being a director help you with your own shows?
It's funny because I don't. I've worked with directors, but not. I don't. With my solo shows, I don't. I tend to just do it for the audience and like I build it as I go. I'm constantly sort of changing stuff, and there's a lot of improvisation in my shows. So I did my first solo show. I had Mick Barnfather help me with it. Um, I had loads of ideas that I developed sort of on the circuit, and he helped me sort of bring them all together and give it a form. Because I mean that's the thing. It's like, and that was sort of him coming in at a late stage and helping me piece it all together. Most of the direction that I do is I'm there from the beginning, and we're basically writing it together. You know, we're devising it together. You know, and most comedy directors in the fringe world tend to be like that. They co-writers really. They don't just
Okay.
come in and go stand over there. Oh, you know, let's light this side of the room, or you know, let's change the set. Generally, you don't have much money for sets and stuff, so it tends to be. It's the same with if you're doing stand-up and you're directing a stand-up show. You know, you're there from the beginning. You're there kind of like within that process because essentially, ultimately, the directors of any comedy in show is the audience. So it has to be a process, like the way you build a show. You know, the way you do previews or whatever you do, work in progress shows. Ideally, the director is there, seeing all of those, seeing how it goes with the audience, and then refining it and clarifying it each time. You know, and it's that process of you know we think this is funny, but we're not going to find out until we do it in front of an audience. You know?
Do you spend like a couple of hours chatting with a person, going through ideas, or how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, first thing I would do is I would meet up and just have a chat over coffee or whatever for a while, just to see whether, well, to see, well, I mean, if I don't know them very well, to see whether you know, whether it's going to be a good fit and they're happy, you know, and we would just talk about what they want to do. But I mean, it depends. Sometimes people are making a show and they really don't know what to do, which is absolutely fine and totally valid, I think. You know, like, and then let's explore that. And then some people have a more clearer idea of what they want to achieve. So yeah, anything's possible.
Okay. And so you mentioned that the Fringe is a great festival and it's a fun process, sort of directing shows and building shows. But you've been in the Fringe for a while. How has it changed? Because a lot of apart from comedians moaning about the price and the cost of everything, how has it changed in terms, and how do you have to adjust your own show and other people's shows with the change in Edinburgh?
That's quite an interesting question. I mean, in the time that I've been going, I guess I've done every fringe since 2009, I think. And I think it was in 2009 that the Big Four started doing their own program. So it's been really commercial, and the whole time I've been there, yeah, prices have gone up. It's true, but they were still fucking expensive then, you know. So it's really not great in that respect. But in terms of the show, making shows now, there's no difference in the way we would. I mean, then I was making my own shows, just my own shows, but I don't think there's any change in how you would make a show.
Okay. Because I've interviewed 200 odd people, and
Mm,
lots of them have been to Edinburgh. And
mm,
this is some of the criticisms I get with the Edinburgh Fringe as a whole. It's like
yeah.
President Bunjo said to me with the things that are going on in Edinburgh,
Oh yeah.
it's finished. Tom Little says that if you want to get on TV, it's more
Oh
important to
yeah.
live in London than to go to the Edinburgh Fringe.
Hmm.
And then what's another thing that's happened? Yeah, like what's people used to say in the past, like you do one big Edinburgh show, then you go on TV. What's
Hmm.
often the path now of a good show? Like you go to Soho Theatre, you get seen, you take it around the world. But then what do you do afterwards? You get an agent? Is that what's the
That's a
path
really
now of the Edinburgh Fringe?
that's a big question. I mean, I think if your goal is TV, I don't know. There is a bit of a like I've seen so many acts come through. They've got heat on them. They start talking to TV. They have meetings. They maybe start writing something. I mean, the process to get on TV is so difficult because, but still, Edinburgh is still like if you get nominated in Edinburgh, you're going to get meetings with people, you know. And then, but then of course that's only the beginning because you've got to develop a project. But then there's so many people that have got to say yes on the way up, you know, and get you to a point where you can actually make a pilot, and then that pilot needs to get the yay and whatever. It's I mean, it's an incredibly competitive industry, isn't it? But there may be other ways to get noticed or your foot in the door, but Edinburgh would be one of them, and I've seen many people uh, take that, particularly if you get nominated. I mean that kind of seems to open up doors. But I don't think there would Steve. I was going to say Steve Gadd. He's a drummer, but Richard Gadd, for instance, I think Edinburgh is the path he's taken, and you know, I don't. I mean, because like you mentioned Soho Theatre, but how do you get in Soho Theatre? You do Edinburgh, and they
Yeah.
see you in Edinburgh. That's the path to Soho Theatre. Really, probably
And
most people anyway.
yeah. And I think it's some. No, I'm not going to say the name of the lady. Uh,
Mm.
but what's I've seen one thing I'm going to do in the podcast is I'm going to get interview people from other festivals from across the globe because I hear from
Yeah.
performers in Germany, but they get paid to do festivals and it's got loads of different better venues, loads of more audiences. The American fringes, the Canadian fringes, you get much bigger audiences,
Hmm.
much more stuff to work with.
Yeah, yeah.
What What are your thoughts on the other fringes that seem to be more less costly for performers? They may not bring fame, but they're more.
I mean, you're talking about fringe festivals. I don't know if the ones in Germany that you're talking about are fringe festivals. I mean, there's probably more funding in those countries. Well, what I would say about the Edinburgh Fringe is like they all come there, you know. I mean, it's like it's international. It's the biggest international collection of artists uh, from all over the globe. So what you can learn there is incredible. You can see everything there. People from everywhere. So festival. I mean, like I just did Prague Fringe. I was there last week. You know, it's not going to make me a lot of money. I've done Reykjavik Fringe. I've been to Adelaide Fringe. Adelaide Fringe, I think, is harder than Edinburgh Fringe.
Oh,
100%, no question. There's no audiences there. Also, you got to fly there, and there's just very few audiences there. So that's tough. So I don't know if there are. I don't like. I know that, and the Canadian fringes, the way I understand it, is you pay money to apply to do a lottery, and then all that money. And you don't necessarily get in, but if you do get in, they've got a pool of money that helps them put together the festival. They also keep it a certain size so that it's not open access. So it's basically kind of curated, but so I guess if it's kept a certain size, then they can rely on a certain amount of audience that's going to be there, pool of audience. But at the same time, the great thing about Edinburgh, and any fringe is it's open access. Anybody can do a fucking show, and that's kind of, but that's also why it's so competitive, and that's also why the how it's so expensive to stay there because it's everybody wants to be there from all over the world. I mean, it's I don't know.
What?
I don't know how you can solve that. I don't know how you can like. And of course, people are priced out of it, and people can't do it, and that is not great. But at the same time, I mean, I actually think that people probably should just do smaller runs, and they should support people on on shorter runs because
Uh,
one of the things about Adelaide Fringe and other fringes, people don't tend to do the whole month, and there's this obsession about doing the whole month, but that's all about winning an award. They want to win the Edinburgh Comedy Award, so they think they have to do a month. It seems like something like that. And it's a long festival, isn't it? I mean, quite intense to do a month. Why not do 2 weeks, a week?
yeah, I mean, I did see that Sam Campbell, was it the last year or the year before, won it with just 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah, and that's kind of that's I think that's the first time that's ever happened. So um, I think it's going that way. I think people are doing shorter runs now, and that's good. I
Yeah.
think. Um, but yeah,
What?
but people, but to be honest, people have been saying all those things since I first went up.
Oh,
They've been saying that for 20. Everyone's been saying, "Oh, there are other ways to get onto TV. There's better ways to do it." Um, I mean, I personally am not. I mean, those sort of dreams of being on TV, whatever. I don't do it for that. I'm not doing it to get on TV. I think if TV came along, I'd be happy to do it. But it's not what I'm trying. It's not. I just think that the TV industry is such a competitive industry. Uh, it's kind of like, I know so many performers who've done a number of pilots, some shorts, whatever, and they haven't come to anything.
hmm.
I don't know. Yeah, and a lot of people obviously going up with that dream, and I think if you go up with that dream, you're most likely going to be disappointed. It's thousands of people.
But on the
Yeah.
flip side of that, what is the thing you've noticed about award-winning shows? I mean, you won a Malcolm Hardy, I believe.
Hmm.
You're, what have you noticed with the shows that have gone on to win awards and have really stood out? What was it that you think got them the award, and what is it? What actually, no, let's rephrase this question because there's a lot of good shows that don't get nominated or that. But what have
Yeah,
you
of course.
noticed about really, really good shows in the fringe, and what makes them stand out? What are the things that you've noticed?
But when you say good shows, are you saying like successful shows? I mean, sometimes I mean, I haven't got a clue. I don't like. I go up to Edinburgh and I haven't seen a single one of the shows that
Oh,
are nominated. You know, and but they're considered the good shows, but I'll have a handful of 5 shows that I've seen that I fucking think are the greatest show that I've seen, and there'll be other people that probably like those same shows as well, but they're not winning awards. I don't think I think awards just come down to there's 4 or 5 people who like that show, you know, and that's the nature of it. It's however many judges there are, what are they into? What do they like?
but what's the thing that makes yeah, the bit. What have you noticed in shows, the 5 shows that you watch that you think are brilliant? What
Mm.
makes them stand out? And you've obviously seen
Oh,
some bad shows. Do not mention any names or anything, but what have you
no, no.
noticed in terms of the very good shows and the bad shows? How are they different, and what have you noticed?
I mean, for me personally, it's about the performer with comedy. It's really about like, do I enjoy the performer? Is the performer fun and playful? Because literally shows can come down to very little. There can be very little in a comedy show. I mean, but if we're happy to be with that performer, that's my number one thing. I would say, and I think everything is built around that, and that's your ability your ability to play an audience, be playful, go with the flow, to improvise, to because what's great about clowning and comedy is in general is that you're playing a live audience, you know, and that's the difference between live and television. And I'm a big fan of live performance for that reason. So the ability to go with the flow, read a room, and roll with mistakes, and yeah, I mean, for me, those are the things that make a good show for me. Uh, and then there's of course things like it's got, probably got to have a good ending. It's got to have a kind of and it's got to keep you engaged. So it's got to have some surprises in it. It's got to mix things up. I mean, I often a bad show. I think I would say is when it becomes after 20 minutes, it kind of like you get the feeling it's never gonna change, and that the rhythm's gonna stay the same, and the kind of vibe is the same. And I'm like, after you just don't want to get bored. You don't want to be bored, that for me personally. So there needs to be surprises. Yeah.
What if they punch you?
They punch me.
No joke.
That would be a surprise. I mean, how you surprise? I don't know. I mean, a surprise could just be like a different rhythm. You're doing some sort of rhythm, and then suddenly, or different emotion, or a different, it could be you start shouting at the audience, and it's unexpected. I mean, that's going to wake you up as an audience member. You're going to be like, oh, okay. If everything stays in the same rhythm, for me personally, I kind of I'll fall asleep.
It's a bit like a movie, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
there's a change of pace. There's a change as you go through a movie. You get to know the characters a bit. You see the setup. Then something
yeah,
bad happens. They go on a journey, gets a little bit better. Then another surprise happens, and then at the end, it gets close to the end. Oh, another surprise, and then there's another surprise, and it ends well or ends bad depending on the movie.
yeah. I think so. I think it's like it's very much like a movie. Um, and it's the same with finding it. There's a sort of arc to it, or and a satisfying ending if it's really good. Um, I think, yeah, but I mean, I mean, for storytelling, for sure, the structure of a story is very similar to a film, I think.
Yeah.
But the difference between, I mean, clown shows, we 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 tend to often think about games, that we're playing rather than lines, and so structuring games with the audience or games on stage, and you know, that's the only thing that's slightly different, I think, from again, different from stand up.
Yeah. But they do follow the narrative that comedy
Yeah,
comes from tension, surprise, and
exactly. Tension, release. Yeah, yeah,
a
all
bit
of it.
like a fart.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, this is why I would say, like, people, like, when someone's dying on stage, you know, they're building up so much tension. There is the potential for a big laugh, you know. But often, and that's the key, isn't it? I mean, I don't see. There's no problem with periods of time when the audience isn't laughing, as long as you can get the payoff. You can
Hmm.
use that tension for a big release. You know,
And a big laugh. I
a big
mean,
laugh.
once it gets relieved with the
I mean,
potential
what
built
you
up.
don't want it to do is it to be a heckler, and then everyone's just laughing at you and how bad you are. And
Ah, that's true.
yeah,
Wha- One thing I've noticed, how has it been when you've been doing Edinburgh shows and there's only one or two people and you've been doing clowning? How do you get them to play games when there's just one or two people in the audience and they're tense, like they need a shit?
yeah. Well, I mean, I think doing shows to one or two people, although it is really hard, And I think it is really hard to get them on board. But actually, sometimes it's kind of not, because in a way they are they can see you. You're looking straight at them. They have to engage with you, you know? Like, whereas if you've got an audience of people, let's say 30 or 40 people, and it's not going well, they can just ignore you. You know, they can just coldly just stare at you. Whereas at least like two or three, they'll smile at you, you know, and they'll make an effort with you because it's so intimate, you know, on the whole. But I think that's one of the journeys of doing Edinburgh, and one of the learning experiences is doing shows for small numbers, um, because it is hard, but it'll make you better performer. I hope.
I hope, yes, it toughens your skin to
Toughens
be
the
told
skin.
your shit.
Yeah, yeah. And I've seen some great shows with performers doing shows to like two or three. It's been really funny. It's just because they have kind of rows, just because it's just hard. It's harder to have fun with two or three people. But but good people can do it. You know, you can do it. You can have a great show with two or three people, and then have a shit show with like 40 people. So you know,
What's when
what
I
was your
mean,
question again? The question was, what do? You got to have a good time. You got to have fun. You just got to find a way to have a good time, because if you don't have a good time, then it's just going to be horrible, and then they're not going to have a good time. So simple as that.
enjoy whatever the situation, even if it's
Yeah,
awkward.
yeah. Because if you have a good time, it won't be as awkward. It'll be awkward if you start like, if you're not enjoying it. It'll then it's going to get real awkward.
So when you've done a couple of my nights, I think you did one of my nights as the establishment,
Yeah, a
and I
long time
remember you
ago.
guys. It was a very awesome night. It was in Hammersmith, I think 2017, wasn't it? As the
Yeah,
establishment, and it went
yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
well. And you guys were doing, you're throwing all sorts of props on stage, and like when I've gone to see some big shows like Julia Masley and Vigo Venn, and they got all these big props and all of the timing of the music and all of these things together, how in a gig like mine, where there isn't as many things for them to play with, how do they manage to prep? Considering the atmospheres are slightly different, you don't get to use as much as sound or equipment or props. How do clowns use the stand-up circuit where you don't have as much things to prepare for their shows? How do they build it all up? You know, this sounds like a stupid question.
Well, I mean, no, ultimately, and I think clowns are good at this. They'll adjust to any environment. You know, that's doesn't matter if it's street limit. We've only got this many. Whatever we've got, if people are good, the limitations are what make it kind of interesting. And if you're doing a show, I mean, I've got many different versions of shows. So if I've got a show, I'll have a, I'll have numbers and stuff that don't involve a lot of props, so that I don't have to carry loads of props around. And I think,
Ah,
you know, I know that I'm sure that Vigo and Julia have got a set that they could do without props. You know, if it definitely wasn't needed. But you can turn up with a suitcase. I mean, a suitcase. I don't know. Um, what's the question exactly though? You want what do they do without music? I mean, if like for instance, if I turn up and they've got no sound system, and I can't plug my guitar in, and I can't do this and I can't do that. I'm kind of all right. I'm like, oh, okay, all right. Well, and I'm just in my head. I'm going, okay, what can I do? I'll think of something else. I'll think of something else. I kind of like I work around it.
yeah, it was a stupid question. Anyway, it was, but it was just, yeah, and in a way, it helps the bit that you're developing to have the limitations, as you said, so they
Yeah,
can build. Okay, so we don't have
yeah.
this.
And often you have a limitation, and then you find something new, and you're like, oh fuck it, or you do it without the prop, and you go, fuck it, didn't it's funnier without the prop, or whatever. You imagine it. I don't know. It depends what the thing is, but yeah.
One thing I found with comedy, there's a lot more alternative nights than there was when I started. Like you got ACMS, you got these other nights. But
Mm.
how how do you personally play the different kind of gigs that you're in? Like in a stand-up night, you guys are likely to be, it's mostly joke writers and there's a certain style, and you guys will be the odd one out. But in an ACMS lineup or some of these other alternative shows, you're all a bit madcap. How do
Mm.
you get the balance right? Because if you've done something that's too similar to the act before you, will it have an
What we're
effect on
all
whether they like you? Or yeah.
um, well, I mean, I find the ACMS audience is quite a fun audience. It's very easy. We can just do anything, fucking nuts. And it's kind
Oh,
of like,
okay.
but that question of like, because that's actually what people often say. They'll go, oh God, I went to the stand-up night. This is other clowns, and it was all stand-ups on the bill. And I'm like, perfect. You're going to stand out. You're going to get out, and you're just going to be like completely another planet. And like, you're not competing with them. Just do it. And it's actually there's a lot of advantages to that. I like doing a stand-up night. I like being the only stand-up on the bill, the only alternative act on the bill. And like you're saying, if you're all alternative acts on the bill, then again, I would watch it, and if I felt like people were doing things too, because I've got quite a lot of different acts and different things, but if I saw people doing things that I thought were similar to me, then I would do something different. I mean, that must happen in stand up, no? Like stand up gets up and they're talking about exactly what you're planning to talk about. Yeah.
It's not happened to me, but I've seen it happen to others. And I think I remember booking a night recently where I booked too many comics from the same background. And the
Mm.
first two did quite well, but the third one struggled a bit.
Yeah, because we've heard it already. We're kind of like, okay. And then, because also then you're talking about the same themes, and we've heard them already, and then whatever you do has got to be funnier. Otherwise, there's kind of pressure, isn't it?
But that's which I've been told a lot of comedians struggle with is listening skills. And like I spoke to Jeff Raz, one of the things with he says with a good clown is you really got to be in your moment and see
Mm.
what's there. It sounds so basic and obvious, but I, as a comedian, sometimes get in my head and forget it. But
Yeah.
forget what your idea is or what it is. It's good to have a set plan, but whatever happens, you got to deal with whatever's in front of you. If
Mm.
you have your idea of doing stilts and falling over, and someone's done something similar, you need
Yeah.
to come up with something. I don't know if it's a fart,
That's
if you
it.
pick your nose, maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever, whatever
Yeah. Yeah.
works,
Yeah.
you got to read
But
what's there.
but that is ultimately it. That is ultimately it. And that's how we train. As clowns, that's the training. Is like do what works, and then if it's not working, do something else. And that's how we find what's funny, and it can be different from a different audience to audience, um, and that is the clown. That's the kind of that is the sort of the main rule of clowning for me is if it's funny, do more of it. If it's not funny, stop doing it, do something else. You know,
Yeah, that was
because if we
shit.
keep
Get
doing the
off.
thing that no one likes, we're just going to go deep into the flop, and we're never going to get out.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I mean that's why I think clowning is really great. It's really great training. It's hard, but it's good. It's good for stand-ups to do it. Because it gives. Because also I noticed early on when I first started doing comedy that when a stand-up would make a mistake or say something that they didn't mean to say, or if a compare would make I don't know call someone the wrong name and act the wrong name, it would get a really big laugh. And often like the biggest laugh would be like the fuck up. And then sort of discovering clowning, and it was like, oh yeah, that's it. We're exploiting the fuck up. We're exploiting the mistake. You know, so once you learn to exploit mistakes, then nothing can go wrong because you'll be funny when you fuck up. So it takes the pressure off getting everything right. You know,
yeah, and they can relate
it's
to you more.
yeah, and also you're more relatable. Yeah, yeah, you're more human. 100%.
especially as Brits. Is this bit true about being British that we don't like it if people are too perfect, too like, oh, I'm the man, I got millions of pounds, I'm perfect. This we like to see people fail and fuck up and be the underdog. Is that a British thing? Do you feel?
I don't know if it's necessarily underdog, but I actually think that the reason why people liked, and of course, I don't like him, but the reason why Boris Johnson was so popular was because he was prepared to make a mistake and go, oh, sorry, it's a mistake. Oh, did I say that? Or he literally he'll just make mistakes, and so people liked him because most politicians just they got a party line. They never admit to mistakes. They kind of like they always deny. They just deny things that they say that are wrong. I mean, he does that as well. He lies, but he's prepared. He sort of he performs off the cuff. Doesn't mind saying the wrong thing. Doesn't mind making a mistake. So people like that. I think Donald Trump does it a little bit. You know.
Uh, we don't like people that seem too perfect because it seems too good to be true, and that's why people like Donald Trump and Boris Johnson, even though we know they're arseholes and that they can be a bit daft. At least we see some element of realism. Oh, even though they are dodgy and
Yeah.
slimy
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Dodgy as fuck. But we relate to them. You know, because we yeah. In some way, it must be. I mean, I think there's something to that. Um, yeah, I don't think anyone likes anything perfect. I mean, perfect is AI, perfect is robots, perfect is isn't it? The opposite of AI is human, and what is human? It's making mistakes and getting things wrong. You could argue,
It's
you
true.
know, yeah.
Um, Now, what I want to look at is so you've been in clown, you've done stand up, and you've done all sorts of disciplines. Maybe even you've gone to farting school. I don't know, but the thing, that would be an interesting school. But uh, you set up like so. Not only are you like a teacher of clowning and you're a performer director, but you set out a London Clown Festival. Now that is intriguing. How did you get about doing that? And what's it like curating a lineup? And you must get lots of messages from clowns saying, "Listen here, Dan, if you don't put me on this London Clown Festival lineup, you're not going to be counting the fingers you ain't got." In a very polite Hugh Grant way.
So yeah, they might do after this podcast, but anyway, there we go.
That's true.
Um, yeah, so I set it up. We set it up. Whatever it was, 2014, I think, and it was just because basically most acts that were doing clown shows, and this has changed now a little bit. They would never describe their shows as clowns. They would never describe themselves as clown because the feeling was if you put clown on your in your blurb, you're not going to sell any tickets because everyone's going to think you're doing something with red noses and you're doing some kind of children. It might be a children's show or something if you put clown. So
Yeah.
nobody put clown on their shows. So often people would see a show like Dr. Brown or something. They'd see the show, and they would have no. They'd be like, "Oh, I like shows like that," but they'd have no way of finding other shows similar. So if you go to see a improv show and you like it, well, you just go and see lots of improv, and you look it up, and you'll find lots of improv. If you like stand up, you'll find stand ups. But with clown, it was like no one was admitting to being a clown, so it was impossible to find them all to sort of bring it all together. So the idea was bring it all together, have a festival, and then hopefully audiences will start to realize that there's all these other acts as well. So it's about bringing the community together really and celebrating the art form. But since then, it has changed. Like, I mean, I think, Vigo and Julia are good examples of successful comedians who identify as clowns. I mean, like, even Dr. Brown, he never put clown on any of his blurb, never described himself as a clown, but they do. And I think that's quite a shift. And I hope that the Clown Festival has sort of been part of that because that was the idea was like let's because a lot of the shows that we produce or that we curate are kind of they're very contemporary clown shows. They're not like they're. I mean, we were the first people to show Natalie Palamides' show Laid. Um, yeah, lots of people's first shows that are doing really well now, and so it's to celebrate clowning and hopefully and introduce audiences to it, particularly to show audiences that there are these different what clowning is.
Hmm.
And now it's at Soho Theatre, which is great, and um, that's my answer.
You just wanted to bring more clowns and make
Yeah,
people
bring
more.
more people to it, bring more audiences to it, yeah, and show them that there was more, that there's a scene, and then yeah, and it's grown year on year, like the scene, I think, and now there's kind of a scene in LA, and there's a scene in Australia. There's bigger scenes. There's scenes growing up all over.
Hmm.
Right.
How do you create the lineup? Like, do you obviously get a lot of applications, or do you just pick them? Do you get applications, or
I
do
just
you
picked
pick
them
them?
because it's actually quite short. It's quite a small festival. It's only like 10 shows that we have.
Okay.
It's quite small. So um, some of them are people get in touch with me, and some I will I will hear about, or I'll see them in Edinburgh. I'll go and see a lot of shows at the Edinburgh Festival
Okay.
to find shows. Yeah.
What? How do you respond to those that ask and that you don't want to book? Oh, no, no, I'll leave that. I'll leave that. Let's leave that out of there.
We'll
No,
talk
no,
about that.
let's leave that. No. So one thing I found, like when trying to get clowns on the podcast and compare with comedians, and this is God honest truth, I found that clowns are easier and more responsive to get on the podcast than comedians. I
Right.
found that with the podcast, when getting comedians on, if I message 20, I'll get maybe two or three. But I found with clowns, I messaged about six, about four have agreed to come on.
All
So that
right.
I found that to be a very good thing. And there seems to be a bit more support from the outside, even though I'm not involved in clowning as much. What would you say is something about the clown community that is a bit that you think could change
Could change.
for the better?
Could be
There's
better.
good and bad with everything. Stand up, acting. What's the thing about the clowning community that you think could change for the better? That isn't fishy. If you don't want to answer it, no worries.
I don't know. I can't. I mean, for me, things that could be better. I don't know if you're familiar with the improv world, but they have like they tend to have their own theaters and stuff. I don't know. There's free association. They've got their own theater. I mean, I think for clowning, it would be nice to have a theater space somewhere it'd be nice to have a designated venue that just does clowning comedy shows.
Mm.
Um, because like for instance, the Bill Murray, we obviously a lot of clowns perform at the Bill Murray, but the Bill Murray is essentially a stand-up venue, and the stand-ups are given the majority of the slots.
Yeah,
Uh, it would be nice to have something similar to the Bill Murray, but for clowning.
yeah.
But that takes someone being really organized, and most clowns are not that organized.
That's true. No,
Yeah, they could be more organized.
there we go. Now, what what have been one thing I find interesting? I spoke to John Fleming. He interviews a lot of comedians, but he says
Oh,
what's often interesting about comedians is their life outside of comedy because there isn't that much money in it for most people. Um, what do you think? What have been? Yeah, what do you think clowns are as people outside of being clowns? Because comedians often the thing gets quoted as if they're really confident on stage, they're often quite shy in life. What would you say? I found that most performers, they are comedians more so than any other. we are slightly different to the average Joe, but comedians definitely more so. I notice with actors and theatres and clowns, you're slightly more aware of social norms and how to behave, but there is that slight bit of difference to the regular office work on the street.
What clowns are different. I think I don't know, like with stand up. I mean, because I started in the stand up kind of world. I always felt at stand up gigs at, at you know, it's not always true, but I always felt like an element of competition, like I mean, of course there is competition, but I kind of like if someone's doing well, there's a slight like, you know, people not really happy for them. I feel like in the clown world, people are quite supportive of each other more so.
Hmm.
And I experience that more in the cabaret world as well. There's a lot more women in the clown world, so it's a much more mixed. It's almost like 50-50, you know. So it's a different vibe,
Hmm.
different vibe. And so, but you know, but back to the shy thing. I think most performers are shy. I think actors are often shy. I think this is quite surprising to people. You know, of course, there are the ones that are really big, but a lot of them, a lot of them. I mean, I consider myself to be. I mean, I was always very shy as a child, very shy, um, and in a way, performing is what's helped me kind of combat my shyness in a way.
Hmm.
Because you sort of go, fucking hell, I just did a show for like 50 people. How can I say I'm shy anymore? You know, it's like you sort of, but essentially, I've always identified as shy, felt shy. Which is why often I think at comedy nights it can be quite awkward when everyone meets at the beginning, you know, because everybody's just everyone's socially awkward, and that's why we're comedians. I mean, I think comedians use comedy, don't they, or comedy you use it to express yourself. So often people who feel awkward tend maybe or have some level of social anxiety are drawn to comedy.
Hmm.
I would
That's
say,
true.
yeah, but I'd say that's true of clowns as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting. Interesting.
yeah. I just think that clowning's really good. I think they open up. Clowning opens you up to being more playful, more silly, or letting go of your shit. You know, letting go of your ego. I think in the comedy in stand up world, there often there'd be a lot of ego involved, and the clowns we're so always like battling with our to get our ego out of it. We know that our ego is no help for us on stage when we want to be present for the audience. So we sort of have this. Uh, that's kind of part of the training,
Yeah.
so it's healthy. You know, did you? How did you find the learning clowning, and did it help your performing? You know.
Well, this is something I actually forgot. But I've only sort of become aware of recently. But it made me, when I first did the clowning with Mick Barnfather, is to be very present. But I've
Mm,
only really got that again through having a chat with Rez. And sometimes you get deluded by your ideas and you get too in your own world. And
mm,
it's good to have a preparation before you go on stage. But the most important thing is that you be in the room and be aware and deal with what's going on. I think that clown teaches you more than stand up because stand ups have their jokes and their prepared sets to hide behind themselves. Whereas
yeah.
with clowns, you don't do that. You just let out yourself. You're basically naked
Ah,
with your personality. Though some clowns do take their clothes off. I know that Red Bastard likes to also play in front of other
yeah.
people.
Well, so ultimately, that's why I think if you learn clowning and then as a stand up and then you put the stand up on top, I mean that's like you're you've got superpowers. It's a superpower, you know.
Yes.
Because and that's what you want as a clown. I mean, I did. You want to have the killer material as well that works every time, and you build that. But you also know that you can survive if everything falls apart and everything goes wrong. You know that, like, if the set collapses or whatever, it could possibly be the funniest bit of the show. So it's what I when I'm directing a show, it's what I say to the performers. We've been working on it. I say tonight Everything's going to go wrong. Yeah. And it's probably going to be the funniest shit that happens in the show. So just let it go. Have a good time. So get
Yeah.
away from that idea of, oh man, can't fuck up. Oh shit, got to get everything right. Got to hit all these marks. Got to do that. Now, at some point, just have fun is the most important thing, and then that, and the audience will have fun. And also, you just don't know where the comedy is going to come from, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And for anyone that's listening in right now,
Hmm.
um, who would, yeah, what, how do they get in touch with you? How do they find out about you? I can also give them your address. I can give you, I can
Well,
give
they
them
go to
your
my
address, your
website.
email address.
My website has got everything on there. My email's on the website, danleescomedy.com. So yeah, just they can get in touch through there, and it's all there. Or danlees@gmail.com. You can have my email.
Okay. And also, guys, Dan is also doing a course, I believe, I think in July.
Yeah, I'm doing a clown course in July. What's the dates? I think it's the 22nd to the 27th, last week of July. Yeah, 5-day clown workshop. There's still half the places have gone, but yeah.
Okay. So, guys, if you want to be the bollocks of clowning,
You want the superpower?
yes, you know where to go.
You want to learn MMA fighting?
Exactly. MMA
Don't come to
clown.
me. Don't come. MMA clown. Yeah, that's the next thing.
Wouldn't that would be quite a thing to see, like an MMA fight in the UFC. He's taking up clowning.
Yeah,
He's doing all these hooks, but then he
might help.
mistimes it. He confuses Khabib, and then he headbutt him by accident. And he wins the fight. Oh my god!
Yeah, I think the Gypsy King's a clown.
He is, isn't he?
100%. I'd love to have him in a clown workshop. I reckon he'd probably be really good.
You know, he actually did a stand-up course with Daniel Sloss.
No
There's a
way.
video of him
No way.
learning stand-up from Daniel Sloss.
What? That's mad. Oh man, I'd love to have him in a clown workshop. I think he'd be hilarious.
Oh God, yeah, he's brilliant. Or what about Conor McGregor? When Conor McGregor stops sniffing,
Hmm.
maybe you could get him on as well.
Yeah, maybe him as well. Yeah.
Right, I hope you guys have enjoyed the episode. I've enjoyed the episode. This episode will be go out in a couple of weeks, and the next guest I'm gonna have on Slappy Monday with Tiffany Riley and Dick Monday. So hope you've enjoyed it. I'll see you guys soon, and share the podcast, give it a 5-star review and everything, and make sure that you pay me and Dan good money on the Patreon, okay? And I'll see you guys later.